4G/5G broadband connectivity worldwide. The US has scrapped the pure H-1B lottery and introduced a weighted system that prioritizes higher paid, higher skilled workers alongside the $100,000 additional fees in many cases and stricter social media vetting, making visas harder, costlier, and riskier for ordinary Indian engineers, raising the question, has the American dream now officially become America only? India has quietly set 2026 as a hard execution deadline to prove whether it can turn deep tech ambition into industrial reality. With 1 lakh crore rupees in sovereign RDI funding primed for AI, semiconductors, quantum, robotics, and advanced manufacturing, $67 billion plus big tech AI infrastructure bets from Amazon, Microsoft, Google transforming India into a global build site, VCs like Special Invest, IIT Bombay, Cine, IDTA and Pontac filling the growth capital gap, and enterprise engines like Reliance's Jio Gen Next and the traction validated scale of India's tech ecosystem shifting the focus from policy announcements to shop floor deployments, scaled pilots, and export-ready deep tech companies within the next 12 months. And finally, Digantara, the Bengaluru-based space surveillance company, has raised a $50 million Series B to build a sovereign space intelligence and missile early warning constellation with 15 satellites planned through 2026 and 27. And founder Anirudh Sharma joins us today on Front Page. So please stay tuned as we celebrate India's deep tech revolution like never before. Somewhere after this launch, a student in remote village will open up a phone and stay connected through an entire class. A doctor in a flood-hit district will make a video call and trust it won't drop when it matters the most. A fisherman far out at sea will check the weather and make a safer call home. They won't know a rocket flew today, or maybe they might, but they will for sure feel something very rare, a connection that doesn't fail. And that's when today begins to matter. In Bahubali, there's that iconic moment where Amrendra Bahubali lifts the massive shivling on his shoulders, not to show strength, but to solve a real problem, to make something possible that others couldn't. Today, India's LVM-3 feels a lot like that moment. We lifted something, ladies and gentlemen, meaningful for the world. A satellite that can bring internet where towers never reach, lifelines to remote villages, disaster zones, oceans, and mountains. Connectivity that doesn't disappear when you need it the most. And just like Bahubali's strength was about purpose, not power, LVM-3's strength today is about access, inclusion, and strategic capability. So, before we deep dive into what just happened, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe because stories like this deserve to travel far. ISRO has successfully launched and placed LVM-3 M6 carrying the 6,100 kilogram Bluebird Block 2 satellite into low Earth orbit. This is the heaviest satellite ever launched from Indian soil and the largest commercial communication satellite ever deployed in LEO globally. It's also ISRO's first dedicated commercial LVM-3 mission for a US customer under an agreement between NSIL and AST Space Mobile. With this launch, ISRO has now deployed 434 satellites for 34 countries. And this matters far beyond just another successful flight. LVM-3 delivered a 6.1-ton payload, firmly proving its reliability in the heavy lift category. It achieved near-perfect orbital accuracy under 2 kilometers deviation, amongst the best globally. This was LVM-3's ninth successful mission and the second LVM-3 launch within just 52 days, a major operational milestone consequently bolstering India's position in the global commercial launch market. And of course, Prime Minister Narendra Modi applauded this by calling it a foundation boost for Gaganyaan commercial launches and India's space leadership movement. So what is Bluebird Block 2 and why it matters? This is why. Bluebird Block 2 is part of AST Space Mobile's global low Earth orbit constellation, designed to deliver direct-to-phone satellite broadband. That means 4G and 5G voice calls, video calls, streaming, text and data, all directly on ordinary smartphones. No satellite phone, no extra hardware. The satellite carries a 223 square meter phased array antenna, the largest commercial communications antenna ever placed in LEO. This is, well, quite simply, space-powered 5G. And it matters because over 2.6 billion people still don't have reliable broadband. Rural connectivity remains fragile. Climate disruptions routinely knock out terrestrial networks. This moves the world closer to connectivity, and that doesn't vanish when conditions get tough. And India isn't just watching this future arrive. India is actually launching it. This mission strengthens India on 3 fronts. First, global space commerce. LVM-3 is now proven as a dependable heavy lift commercial launcher, opening doors to more international missions, stronger revenue flows, and a very deep NSIL pipeline. The second, the future of communication. India is positioning itself at the center of satellite broadband, LEO constellation deployment, and secure sovereign connectivity architecture. This aligns directly with India's ambitions in BharatNet, defense communications, disaster resilience, and digital sovereignty. The third, which is future missions. Back-to-back heavy lift launches build operational discipline ahead of uncrewed Gaganyaan flights, human-rated LVM-3 operations, upcoming PSLV and SSLV missions, electric propulsion platforms, and of course, the Chandrayaan-4 roadmap. ISRO is now balancing scientific missions, commercial launches, strategic capability, and human space flight preparation, all at once. This displays India's maturity. Direct-to-phone satellite internet is only one layer of a larger shift. Alongside this space momentum, India is modernizing how locations, infrastructure, and digital access work on the ground through DigiPin, a 10-digit geocoded address for every 4x4 meter grid, geofenced pin codes, open geospatial datasets, precision logistics and emergency response, future-ready e-commerce, the kind India is building through ONDC, and DPI-grade addressing. Put the two together, reliable connectivity from space, precise digital identity for every doorstep on Earth. That's how nations build digital sovereignty. So while ISRO was lifting the world's heaviest LEO broadband satellite into orbit, India's defense ecosystem scored another milestone on the ground. DRDO successfully completed user evaluation trials of the Akash-NG missile, proving its capability to intercept high-speed, near-boundary, low-altitude aerial threats, one of the toughest real-world air defense challenges. This was powered by an indigenous RF seeker and a solid fuel rocket motor. Akash-NG demonstrated this: precision target interception, performance across multiple altitude profiles, reliability under complex combat conditions. Even industry leaders like Anand Mahindra called it a massive engineering win, applauding DRDO for giving India the air defense eyes, end quote, it needs today. And of course, building towards directed energy weapons and high power lasers tomorrow. This is India doing what great nations do, securing the skies from space, strengthening national defense from the ground, and building sovereign capability end to end. And of course, in conclusion and with pride, the front page take. This launch isn't just about a heavy rocket or a giant satellite. It actually marks India's entry into the elite club of reliable heavy lift launch nations. It places India at the center of the future of direct to mobile global broadband. It strengthens India's commercial space economy, and it very quietly lays the groundwork for one of the world's most robust digital and geospatial infrastructure stacks. LVM3 didn't just lift a satellite today, it lifted India's strategic credibility and its role in the next communication revolution. This is Front Page by AIM Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. And of course, always remember, think AI, think space, think India, think AIM.
Long time, the US had a lot of immigration, like really smart people coming into the country.
Yes.
We back home in India called it the brain drain.
Right.
All our Indian origin CEOs in Western companies.
Yes, I think America has benefited immensely from talented Indians that have come to America.
That seems to be
Obviously.
changing now, though. For a long
American dream now belongs to Americans. That line has been floating around all day. And here's the irony. It came right after Elon Musk, the world's richest person, publicly defended the H-1B visa program, saying the US economy has benefited immensely from Indian immigrants. Well, let that sit for a moment, because for millions of Indians, the American dream never started with a green card. Actually, didn't even start with a Silicon Valley paycheck. It started with a single email, which read, "Your H-1B petition has been selected in the lottery." That one line meant something. It meant parents mortgaging homes was worth it. Years of exam coaching and MS in the US plans were worth it. The visa interviews, the stamping queues, well, in Chennai and Hyderabad, all of it worth it. Tonight, that dream just got a lot harder, because the US has very quietly ended the pure H-1B lottery and replaced it with a system that says very plainly, if you're not highly paid, highly skilled, your chances just collapsed. Add to that an extra $100,000 fee per new H-1B in many cases, and expanded social media vetting for every H-1B and H-4 applicant worldwide. This isn't unfortunately just a tweak. It's a complete reset of how Indians work, live, and even travel to the United States. And tonight on Front Page, we are breaking down that very understanding. So what exactly has changed in the H-1B system? How exposed Indian IT and big tech really are? What this means for students, mid-career engineers, and families planning the United States move, and why, just as America tightens its doors, India is quietly building its own opportunity stack. But before we get into it, as always, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, because this is a policy shock too many people are about to discover, and that too late. So if you're ready, let's get into it. For 2 decades, H-1B worked on a very simple idea. There is a cap, employers employ. If demand exceeds supply, you run a random lottery. Didn't matter if you earned $70,000 or $300,000. If your name came up, you were in. The United States authorities now say that system was abused. They argue that body shops and low-wage employers flooded the lottery with level 1 and 2 roles, crowding out higher skill, higher pay jobs and undercutting American workers. So here's the new rule. starting the 27th of February 2026 for the fiscal year 2027 H-1B season, the United States will use a weighted selection system, which means every application is tagged to a wage level based on the fact that there is going to be a situation where we are going to divide based on Department of Labor data. So let's think of it like a raffle, but the tickets aren't equal. Wage level 1, 1 ticket. Wage level 2, 2 tickets. Wage level 3, 3 tickets. Wage level 4, 4 tickets. So if you're level 1 and someone else is level 4, they are 4 times more likely to be selected. Earlier, nearly 70% of registrations sat in level 1 and 2. Now their odds are sharply cut. While top tier roles get a boost, and then, of course, the second hit, which is a presidential proclamation, which now requires up to $100,000 extra per new H-1B cases. This exception cannot be granted. Officials say the extraordinary is rare. Officially, this is about low-cost foreign labor is out. Even the best will need to justify very high salaries. The changes don't stop at selection. So from December 15th, the US State Department has added expanded online presence and social media vetting for all H-1B and H-4 applicants worldwide. This applies to first users, renewals, every nationality. So the result, as far as that is concerned, is H-1B holders traveling to India for weddings, funerals, or short visits now risk getting stuck outside the United States for months. Internal advisories actually from Microsoft, Google, Apple warn employees, which is avoid non-essential international travel. Be cautious if your visa stamp is nearing expiry. Appointments are being pushed to mid-2026 in some consulates. So, well, the American dream is no longer just harder to enter. It's actually easier to fall out of. You could have a job, a home, a child in school, for example, let's say in Seattle. And one delayed visa appointment in Chennai can put your entire life in complete chaos. The big question, well, that's this. Will this break figure out a method in terms of what it will do to Indian IT? The short answer, well, no. Not like it would have a decade ago, because by now what has happened is it will change who wins and who loses. So from recent earnings calls, Infosys, which is H-1B employees, are now a minority. US workforce, largely local, which is TCS, for example, 500 H-1Bs this year. If we talk about the other big aspects, which is like Wipro, over 80% local US staff, 250 H-1Bs over 5 years. Healthtech, few hundred H-1Bs annually. Tech Mahindra, less than 1% of global workforce on H-1B. LTI Mindtree is the outlier. Still more dependent, but building near-shore centers. So the large Indian IT firms already adapted. More local US hiring, near-shoring to Mexico, Canada, Eastern Europe, offshore and remote delivery for them. So this means higher cost for niche H-1B talent, visa reserved only for high-value roles. Slower ramp-ups for on-site heavy projects. Well, they'll survive. The real pain hits elsewhere. Body shops dependent on cheap level 1 visas. Fresh MS graduates with loans and entry-level wages. Mid-career engineers who saw H-1B as the upgrade path. So for them, the message is quite blunt. If you are not niche, senior, or genuinely top tier, your odds just dropped dramatically. Every year, tens of thousands of Indians spend 30 to 80 lakh rupees on a US master's, take education loans assuming H-1B salaries, plan life around OPT to, well, an H-1B to a green card. Now, the hit comes from multiple angles. Selection odds fall for entry-level roles. Costs rise, forcing companies to be very selective. Travel becomes a gamble. And of course, psychologically, something shifts. For years, this script was simple. US में settle होना है. Now, families are asking, is this even worth the risk? Or should we build careers in India, Europe, Canada, the Middle East, or fully remote? The pipeline won't stop, but it will become thinner, richer, and far more elite. And of course, now here comes the front page take. Let's be honest. For many Indians, success followed one path, which was go to America, get H-1B, get a green card, life sorted. America has quietly replied to that by saying this: we'll still take you, but only if you're expensive, exceptional, and essential. Indian IT will adapt. Big tech will still hire the best. The real shock is for ordinary, hardworking engineers who believe the lottery was their equalizer. There's an irony here, which is just as America tightens the door, India is finally building the infrastructure, AI ecosystem, and digital stack to keep talent here. Or, well, bring it back. Maybe the American dream isn't dead. Maybe it's just gone premium. And maybe the next big dream for Indian tech talent won't be a US zip code, but global work, Indian roots, and leverage built from right here. I'd like to say this. आज अमेरिकन ड्रीम नहीं टूट रहा, बस इंडियन ड्रीम फाइनली जग रहा है. Please do let us know what you think in the comments below. Here's Front Page by AIM Network. Like, share, subscribe, and always remember, think AI, think AIM. Good evening. This is Front Page by AIM Network. So, well, for almost a decade, India's startup story was easy to describe. Apps, fintech, SaaS, services, great interfaces, big gross merchandise value numbers, and very often even bigger losses. But 2026 feels different. For the first time, India's deep tech ambition has a delivery date, not just a vision deck. Because suddenly, a lot of long-term bets are converging, and they're converging fast. The union government has cleared a 1 lakh crore rupees research, development, and innovation fund. This isn't for consumer apps, it's for high risk, hard science, semiconductors, quantum, advanced manufacturing, energy, biotech. At the same time, private capital is stepping in where India has historically struggled: the valley between lab success and real world scale. VCs like Special Invest is raising 1400 crore rupees growth fund too, designed specifically to help deep tech startups survive that brutal jump from prototype to production. Global capital is following. Nvidia, Qualcomm Ventures, and a coalition of US India VCs have committed $1.85 billion plus through the India Deep Tech Alliance. And foreign investors are no longer just testing the waters. DSA Holding and NGS have signed a $2 billion letter of intent with Inauguris to build quantum AI robotics parks and green energy-backed data centers in India. Even academia is changing gears. IIT Bombay's SINE incubator has launched a 250 crore Y-Point Deep Tech VC fund explicitly designed to take ideas out of the lab and into the market. And then there is GeoGen Next. What started as a mentorship platform has quietly become one of India's most powerful deep tech engines, offering enterprise validation inside Reliance itself. Robotics, industrial AI, cybersecurity, energy intelligence, and grid-scale automation. We, of course, broke this and this particular shift earlier on Front Page. And, of course, in a recent Front Page conversation, Traction co-founder Neha Singh put it very simply. She ended up saying India's startup curve is moving away from quick SaaS wins towards deep tech confidence, where capital, founder maturity, enterprise demand, and national AI investments are finally lining up. Big tech sees it too. Amazon has committed $35 billion by 2030. Microsoft, as we know, $17.5 billion by 2029. Google, of course, and is building a $15 billion AI hub in Vizag. So all stories we've tracked are closely something that we have been trying to go ahead and focus on. And this is what it brings us to. It adds up to the fact that Jio and Airtel bundling Gemini Pro, Perplexity Pro, and AI assistants directly into data plans. So the message finally emerges, and it is unmistakable. India isn't just consuming technology anymore. It's being prepared to build it and operate it at scale. We, of course, recently reported that India ranked third globally in tech funding in 2025 at $10.5 billion, ahead of China, alongside record IPOs and more disciplined capital. So tonight, the question sharpens. Will 2026 be the year India finally cracks deep tech at scale, or will this become another chapter of big policy intent without shop floor outcomes? Because when you strip it all down, this moment will be decided on three fault lines. The first one being capital. Is patient growth stage money truly available or still selective and cautious? Second, compute and infrastructure. Will fabs, quantum parks, and data centers arrive on time? And the third one, commercialization. So, can India move from impressive PDFs to products that actually run inside factories, warehouses, grids, and defense systems? Joining us for this discussion is Sanjana Gupta, our very astute tech journalist who will help you and I to understand this a lot better. Welcome to Front Page, Sanjana. How are you doing?
Thank you so much, Sudhi. I'm doing great and great to be here again. And
Fabulous.
yeah, how are you doing?
I'm doing wonderfully well. Now doing better that you and I are all warmed up for this particular discussion. So let's get right into it. First one being,
Definitely.
Sanjana, is India finally funding deep tech at the right layer, or are we still overfunding ideas and underfunding execution?
I feel before we talk about India, we have to sort of understand a global context, around this entire deep tech ecosystem.
Fair enough.
And maybe let me begin with a bit on more of a legacy player. And
Hmm.
let's start with the US. Looking at the United States, they've been a player in the deep tech over the past 5 decades. And, this begins with the right hallmark, incident being the Apollo mission and the race with the
Hmm.
Soviet Union that began, back in the 20th, mid 20th century, you can say. So that's where the US began as a legacy player. You can say an old guard, to an essence,
Sure.
for deep tech, and I feel following closely with them is China.
Hmm.
They began somewhere around, 2014, 15, into the deep tech segment and launched policies like Made in China 2025, which refers to the policy name. And
Hmm.
they, I would say, are in an essence gaining a good momentum when looking at the deep tech industry. But of course, now we look at India.
Fair.
India, I would say, in a sense, has been quite nascent. We began only a few years ago. But in that sense, we've been catching up, I would say. But in essentially, that catch up is happening quite slow. I mean, clearly because we've just began. But I
Are
feel
we
we
on
have
the
a
right
long way to
path
go.
though? That's fine. But are we on the right
Mhm.
path, Sanjana?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we are focusing on the, biggest, deeper technologies that the world is competing in. We are looking
Hmm.
at quantum, we are looking at, AI, we are looking at foundational models, we are looking at space technologies,
Quantum, of course, as
robotics,
a moment
and
of celebration, Sanjana, only yesterday, Amravati was given the nod by the central government
yes,
to become the capital. And of
definitely.
course, uh, uh,
And definitely, I mean,
Chandrababu Naidu
hopefully
ji went
someday.
ahead and, yeah, it was very, very encouraging. Anyway,
Yes,
yeah,
and
you were saying.
someday, hopefully, we do have a Nobel Prize winner out of Andhra Pradesh. And, as the
Yes,
government announced, they would be giving out a 100
sure,
crore prize for that.
sure.
So that's something definitely very exciting to look forward to, to look at
Hmm.
how the government is progressing this sector as well as the, entire VC ecosystem when we look at it. But I feel in terms of the venture capitalists, there's still a
Hmm.
lot more to go on.
Which brings me to this point. What actually decides success now? Is it more capital, since you just mentioned that, Sanjana? Is it
Mhm.
faster infrastructure or better early customers willing to deploy risky technology?
I feel capital is definitely something to look into. It matters, and it's something that drives every startup and the economy when you look at it as a whole, right? And capital is something that in India, when we look at the VCs, they've been very used to, the long gestation periods, sorry, the shorter
Hmm.
gestation periods,
Hmm.
and looking at sort of startups or technologies that are giving faster and easier returns. But when we look at deep tech, it's a technology that is a very long term game, and that's
Hmm.
not something that's going to give faster returns. And definitely that comes into a big play when we look at VCs investing in deep tech. But
Also, wanted to just very
mhm,
quickly ask you something before you go on to the next aspect is Sanjana, that you
right.
mentioned that they are more comfortable in investing in short-term investment, for example,
Mhm.
in comparison to, let's say, the way longer gestation period. Is that also because, do they also feel that they are more comfortable in doing it with the people who have been, like you mentioned, the United States, which are legacy players, or for that matter, China, etc., because they feel, okay, at least that's a much safer ecosystem. We are just starting up.
See, I feel at the end of the day, the funding is for progress of technology, right? And when we look at, let's say, legacy players like US, they've been in the game for a long time. So definitely collaborating with them for funding or for any kind of technology transfer definitely does have its perks. But after saying that, I would also say that India is not falling behind, in that sense. There's been a lot of VCs that are coming up that are recognizing themselves as core deep tech VCs. But
Hmm.
also, I feel when we look at these, deep tech VCs, as they call them, uh, we also need to look at them hoping to broaden their portfolio at with deeper technologies, because a
Hmm.
lot of VCs I come across are deep tech VCs, but they would be, let's say, focusing on alternatives to plastic. And definitely, as much as material science is something that's of a deeper tech game, but like quantum, space tech, something that even like the government is progressing, or something that needs to be
Hmm.
looked into as a countrywide interest, is also something I feel we should delve into. So definitely capital is something. But the second thing you mentioned in terms of infrastructure, that is also very important. But I feel infrastructure also comes and grows with need. So when I say with need,
Fair
I
point.
mean, let's pick up Karnataka, for example. The state has been actively pushing its, Beyond Bengaluru initiative,
Yeah.
going into lots and lots of cities like Mysore, Mangalore, Dharwad.
Sure.
And that is something, infrastructure in those places will grow as and when you actually make
When the
sure that
need arises.
technologies, yeah,
Right.
but the need has to arise, is the point.
Hmm.
That, like, when we
Sure.
talk about building technologies there, the technologies have to build there. So that is something I feel infrastructure does play a part there.
So, can Indian deep tech, this is the next point which I wanted to ask you about,
Hmm.
startup scale manufacturing and deployment before, let's say, global competitors outpace them? Or will timing remain the Achilles heel, Sanjana?
Hmm. Um, I feel when you look at, or let's say when you ask me a global competition in terms of uh, uh, deeper technologies, I feel it very much differs from technology to technology. So,
Hmm.
deep tech is an umbrella term that we use for so many technologies that are emerging right now. But we can't generalize the competition for all. So when you look at, let's say, semiconductors, they've been at the core of any technology for like decades now. And that's something that a lot of countries are already very much advanced in. You look at
Fair.
Taiwan, you look at the US, and they're already way ahead. They're building, a 3 nanometer, 4 nanometer, or even 1.5 nanometer chips now, when
Hmm.
India is still waiting for its fabrication in Dollara to set up so it can begin producing 28 nanometer,
But it
which
is
I
still an
wouldn't.
encouraging start, though, Sanjana. It
Yes,
has
so which I wouldn't
started,
say
it's
is a
encouraging, yes.
backdrop. Yeah, so
Hmm.
it's not a backdrop, but it's something to start with.
Sure.
But on the other hand, if you look at technologies like quantum, robotics, or even space tech, are something that, let's say, for example, quantum, nobody has achieved quantum advantage as of yet. So,
Yep.
whoever achieves it wins the game. You can say it like that. So there's a lot of technologies within deep tech that at the moment stand at that border of who can do the better
Crack it.
R&D, or who can provide the
Hmm.
better funding, and who can crack it first. So quantum remains one of them, robotics remains the other, humanoids, and even space, for example. uh, you know
But
uh,
space tech, of course,
yeah,
is zooming ahead. It's at its great liftoff, which which
definitely.
which I would like to follow up something with, so that maybe you could share that with the entire audience, Sanjana, which is that space tech is a flag bearer at this given point in time in India. There are a lot of companies which have been around for a way longer time than the newer ones which are coming in. So, do you believe that those companies need to maybe carry the torch for the VCs and the government
Hmm.
policymakers to start to feel a lot more attracted towards the sector, so that the newer ones coming in, the newer startups coming in, face an easier road? That's point one. And the other one, very quickly, I want to allude to is, how do you feel about India being very reactive in its research methodology? For example, an Operation Sindoor takes place,
Mhm.
and then we suddenly require all of the missiles, all of the technology coming in immediately, vis-a-vis an America which has been doing this parallelly for the longest amount of time and does not believe in the reactive methodology. So when you
Right.
talked about space tech, deep and defense tech, etc., so I just thought you could also include these when you give us the understanding.
Right. So when you look at sort of, these old startups leading the way and, being the torchbearer for the upcoming startups,
Hmm.
that's definitely something I feel, makes an impact, because for sure, the older startups have gone through, more of a funding,
Sure.
crisis, or you can say a lot of them, go through initial hurdles that I come across when I talk to a lot of them. So I feel that's something that's definitely, you learn from experience. And we have great space tech startups in India. We have Agnikul, we have Skyroot, and they're competing with the likes of, SpaceX in the world. And when is it going to be the time, for them to take charge and, let ISRO
Nice.
be there, but, bring in that sort of the curve to, take it to the private part. So that's something that I feel, that is essential, and that's really good. And I see a lot of startups sort of forming alliances to help, newer startups go ahead. So I would say that is definitely good for your first point. And for your second question, you asked regarding the reactiveness of the
Yes.
country. I would feel that I see that pattern somewhere, but definitely, when you compare it to countries like the US, they have their system set, and they feel
Hmm.
that okay, even though there's no war right now, but we need to be prepared for this.
Hmm.
I feel in India that needs to begin with a good public-private collaboration. And everybody that I talk to
Hmm.
talks about we're doing public private collaboration. But when I say public private collaboration, I mean actual awareness, for the
Hmm.
government organizations and just the industry to be aware that okay, for example, you said Operation Sindoor. So the
Yep.
public organizations to be aware, okay, so and so drone startups are there in India, and this is what they're building. So to have that relationship with them before that, okay, if something does happen, this is how we're going to play it out. And then once the operation is over, then it wouldn't feel like a load as of instantly that
Hmm.
oh, now we need 5 missiles. It's not going to be like that. When you have good collaboration with the private industry, it doesn't work like that. So I feel the journey will be a lot smoother when we look at actual aware partnerships versus just partnerships in the namesake.
Fair enough. Finally, Sanjana, the final question, which is, are we
Mhm.
building technologies that global markets will adopt, or ones that survive mainly on domestic policy support? And of course, your prediction for the year 2026 and beyond.
Right. I feel any startup building in India is not definitely confined to just the Indian environment. They're building out of India with, I would say, advantages like, being cost efficient and,
Hmm.
considering India is a very cost efficient market, or like, let's say, cost sensitive market to an extent.
Hmm.
So they do have advantages like that. But definitely all startups and even any enterprises building in India are building for the world. So I wouldn't say they're restricted by just domestic, technologies or funding. A lot of what they build, they, import raw materials and stuff out of different countries. And I wouldn't say to any extent you can talk about skipping the geopolitics when you talk about,
Sure.
any sort of industry. So geopolitics do come in the play. And I would say we should rather be on the path to, the self-indigenousness that we talk
Hmm.
about recently.
Hmm.
um, and definitely that does start with global partnership. But to an extent, I think that self-sustained ecosystem does really help. And you can see that in cases of countries like China, for example. They're doing great. They have like humanoids at airports, at
Yep.
country borders, and they're doing really good in terms of deeper technologies, and as well as being like an exporter out in the world, but at the
Hmm.
same time remaining like closed off in terms of their technology. So I feel like that's something where we need to start. But nevertheless, I would say that we are doing pretty good for a country that has started out like a few years ago.
Fabulous. All right, well,
Right.
Sanjana, that has been, as always, a fabulous, intriguing, enthralling conversation with you. And of course, wishing you and everyone in your family a very, very happy new year.
Thank you
And
so
really
much. Same to
wishing,
you.
yeah, of course, and really wishing in totality that your predictions come true, that we have a lot more funding flowing
Yeah,
into deep tech in the year 2026 and then beyond. Of course,
definitely.
ladies and gentlemen, that was Sanjana Gupta, our tech journalist. And finally, I believe, post that conversation, I just have to say this. The context was set very brilliantly by her. We, of course, are relatively new to the game, but I believe that we are going in the right direction. Space tech, defense tech is doing fabulously well. I believe a lot of the startups who have been there for a while are setting examples, hopefully, for the policymakers, for the VCs to get attracted towards this ecosystem. And more importantly, and finally, what matters is the fact that new areas need to be funded. Robotics, as Sanjana mentioned. Of course, great initiative as far as Quantum Valley is concerned. And of course, so many others. But in finality, on front page, we'd like to say this, that the path is correct. And I believe we have only a few who are bearing the torch. We need a lot more to join as far as the procession goes into 2026 and beyond. Like, share, and subscribe. And always remember, think AI, think deep tech, think India, think AIM. Good evening and welcome to Front Page. Tonight, we're talking about a company with a name you won't forget, Digantara. In Sanskrit, it means the space between directions. And that's just not just poetic, because Digantara works in a space where governments are suddenly paying very close attention to using satellites not just to watch what's floating in orbit, but to understand what could become a threat on Earth. Digantara began by tracking objects already in space. Today, they're moving into something far more consequential, detecting and tracking threats before they arrive. Joining us is Anirudh Sharma, the founder and CEO of Digantara. His company has just raised a $50 million Series B funding at a moment when governments worldwide are rethinking how space security and early warnings come together. This conversation that we're going to have with Anirudh is not just about the funding headline. That will obviously be a part of the conversation, but it will also be about execution, defense grade technology, and what it really takes to build space intelligence that governments can rely on. Anirudh, a big warm welcome to you on Front Page and a big congratulations from the entire Front Page team on this funding.
Thank you so much.
We are thrilled to have you with us. So let's just start off as far as the timing is concerned, Anirudh. So over the last 2 years, space has very quietly moved from a research domain to a very core defense priority. Budgets are rising, programs are accelerating, and governments are thinking long term. So, in terms of this particular time aspect, you've raised $50 million when governments globally are increasing investments in space based surveillance and missile early warning systems. So, what does this round unlock, Anirudh, strategically for Digantara, and why right now?
I think predominantly two things. The first thing is given the capital that the sector itself needs for us to go from just building a prototype to scaling a model, that is enormous. And I think at this point in time, given we have already launched satellites to space, we have tested our systems both on sensors and softwares. Now it's time for us to scale. And I think scaling doesn't really wait. And it is also important that we put up satellites at the right time, given everything that's happening geopolitically all across the world, be
Sure.
it war in Israel and Ukraine right now. So all of this is playing a very important role in shaping budgets for these governments. And it is important for us to scale at the right time for us to be able to tap into those programs and budgets. That's one. The second thing is the most important thing that we've seen after all these wars is that every country is moving towards building its own sovereign solutions, which means they want to own a capacity, they want to basically be able to control that capacity, and they want to make sure it is done within the country or within the nation that is purchasing it.
Sure.
And that's where the sovereign angle comes into picture. So, given everything that happened, be it Operation Sindoor for India, there was a surge in terms of demand for anything that is defense related technology that can provide either intel or aid in any operations.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we were at the right time, right place for us to be able to encash such an opportunity. Hence, we looked at raising a bigger amount of fund, not just to pursue what we were doing before, which is space domain awareness. We would eventually continue to launch satellites on space domain awareness, but beyond that, we also had to enter into adjacent domains or evolve ourselves from the
Sure.
technology that we have built, and also ensure that again supports government programs and also strengthens capability for any country.
Fair enough. I mean, it makes sense in terms of the fact that you have drawn on all of the experience, the fact that you mentioned that you've launched your satellites, etc. And now the time is nigh for this particular technology in assisting as far as things are concerned world over and the volatility of it all. But when companies, Anirudh, expand into defense adjacent capabilities, the word pivot generally obviously comes to the front of the mind. And what starts happening is, for example, in Digantara's case, the technical through line seems very, very consistent. Digantara began with space situational awareness, as you just mentioned to us and the audience, and has now expanded into missile detection and tracking. So, how do you frame this shift as an evolution of core capabilities rather than a pivot? Or is it based on what the environment suddenly has thrown up?
I think this has always been a pathway for us. And the reason I say that is because fundamentally, forgetting the fact that we do space domain awareness, fundamentally, what we do is track fast moving objects. And in space, we are talking about objects that are moving at 7 to 10 kilometers speed of, 7 to 10 kilometer per second speeds or
Sure.
15 times the speed of bullet.
Mhm.
So we're already tracking literally fast moving objects, hypervelocities, and we have built an algorithm, we have built a sensor that can aid us to do all of what we want to do in terms of space surveillance. Now we want to apply, or we are applying the same physics principle. The underlying principle still remains the same for missile tracking. It is
Sure.
just that we're looking downwards.
Hmm.
While we were tracking space objects, now we are tracking hypersonics or missiles.
Fair.
So the sensor stack would remain the same. The wavelength at which we're looking at doing this detection is different. Image processing is more or less the same as what we were doing for SSA or space domain awareness that we are now evolving for missile applications. So I would say it's more of an evolution. Also, given the fact that every space company across the world right now have to be cognizant of the fact that most or huge chunk of their revenues would come from governments. It's
Sure.
important for us to also act accordingly in terms of the market shifts and market needs and demands. And we've seen a very clear example of that during Operation Sindoor. And at the same time, I think the United States government has been talking about the Golden Dome, which is Trump's flagship program. So all of this led us to building a thesis towards, something like a missile tracking, missile detection, given the fundamentals would remain the same.
Oh, fair enough. Which essentially means that the core technology, as far as Digantara is concerned, is now only maturing to handle a lot more. It's just an evolution which is taking place. This also actually brings us to the limits of how defense systems have traditionally worked, Anirudh. Ground-based systems have done the job for decades. We are all aware of that. But the threat profile, as you had mentioned, has changed and has changed radically. So, space-based IR and optical sensing changes the equation. What advantages do space-based systems offer in detecting hypersonic and fast-moving threats vis-a-vis the traditional methods?
The first thing is when it comes to traditional radars itself, it has a lot of limitations, one of which is Earth's curvature itself. It cannot see beyond certain horizon.
Yep.
That's one. The second thing is atmospheric attenuation. If the weather is bad, it doesn't, we cannot detect a certain system. Now, there are three parts to a missile phase, I would say. I will just make it very simple. The first part is the boost phase of the missile or the launch phase of a missile, where a missile gets launched. The second is the free flight phase, where missile is now moving. The last part is re-entry, where it has to enter a particular location where it was designed to, enter. Now, the re-entry phase of missile detection and even interception is solved through radars. And we saw that happening during Operation Sindoor with S-400s.
Yeah.
But the boost phase and the free flight phase is where the gap is at this point in time. Which means while interception is happening still at a radar level, at a re-entry level, it is very much important for us to ensure we provide intelligence of where a missile is getting launched, which trajectory it is following, and when would it hit a particular location. And that is the gap that we are trying to fill with space-based sensors. Now, space-based sensors is global in nature. We don't have to look at a particular location of any particular place on Earth. It's mostly a constellation of satellite that we have distributed in orbit that's looking at your area of interest based on your constellation design. Now you can ensure there is something that is doing 24/7 surveillance of that particular location for you, so that if there is any takeoff of a missile, or if there is any incoming missile coming towards you, you know much before, so that the interception can happen much more efficiently than missing at a particular location, like we've seen again in Operation Sindoor.
Yeah.
So that is something space-based system or space-based IR sensors in a constellation can solve for, which today traditional systems haven't been able to solve for. And I think the word that I like to use is deterrence. We will just improve
Yep.
how we are looking at security by adding more capabilities that only helps us to be prepared in a much better way than we could have done through a radar.
Which is, I mean, amazingly crucial that you brought out that fact, Anirudh. Deterrence. I think, yes, that is the operative key word and takeaway from that. And I am pretty sure that your technology is going to be able to assist in achieving that. Once actually you move from a few satellites to a full network, Anirudh, everything, which is basically manufacturing, launches, data handling, gets exponentially harder. So you're planning a constellation rollout, as you just mentioned, through 2026-27. So what does execution at this scale involve technically and operationally?
So I would like to say basically this concept of prototyping. All our lives so far, what we've built are systems that could be, prototypes that we have launched to space that did work, and it was more like a technology demonstrator. We had to prove that this technology would work even if we launch it to space.
Sure.
Now it's time for us to scale from one to, let's say, hundreds of systems. So in our case, we're going from 1 to 15 in terms of space situational awareness satellites, and another two missile tracking satellites is more of a technology demonstrator that we are launching to orbit. Now, what changes is before we were focused on just building one satellite and we were doing sequential build of these systems. Now we have to get to parallel build. And the North Star that we're trying to look at is basically the first satellite required a lot of R&D. We had to put in a lot of man hours of engineers who could build this particular satellite. Now we are
Sure.
moving towards technicians being able to build it. We'll have to
Nice.
make this satellites like a stencil. So it's more like, automotive industry where you have figured
Right.
out how a car runs. Now it's for technicians, a bunch of technicians to build another car, and there is no
So is
rocket
it
science
more
in it.
like an assembly line methodology that you're alluding to, Anirudh?
Yeah, yeah. So more like a production line where we're looking at parallelly producing these satellites. And today we can handle a capacity of 5 to max 6 at a time. We would want to get to 30, depending on how the
Nice.
demand is from the government. And truly, nobody ever beyond SpaceX has achieved scaled production of satellites where you can churn,
True.
let's say, tens to hundreds of satellites in a week.
You
And
know,
this
it would.
part of the world,
Sorry.
yeah, yeah. So in this part of the world, it's even more crucial for us to do it because at any given point in time, we are still dependent on American or the Western technologies. And I see a huge gap for somebody like us to play that role of becoming an Anduril or a Lockheed Martin equivalent in this part of the world. And that's how I'm looking at this production line to aid in terms of not just solving space domain awareness or missile problem, but going forward, this can itself turn into a business unit.
Wow, this is fascinatingly encouraging and inspirational, Anirudh. And of course, wishing you and the entire team all of the best and all of the luck and all of the positive energy. But before we move on, I need to ask you this, and this is from our audience's point of view. What are you planning to roll out? If you could just maybe share the details with us, maybe a little bit, and by when?
So we're looking at launching 15 satellites for space domain awareness. What this basically does is tracks every single object from low Earth orbit to geostationary orbit in space. Traditionally, again, the systems that are used are ground-based, either telescopes or radars. We're complementing what's already available with a space-based network so that, let's say, a ground-based system is tracking an object once a day. We would like to go to 4 to 8 times a day so that we increase the cadence of tracking a particular object, which means the catalog or the library that we maintain has a better update rate. That's
Sure.
one. And this 15 satellites we're looking to launch before the end of 2027, December.
Nice.
And we have a launch planned in the month of March on SpaceX, June, then October. Every quarter we have one launch planned, and then we will do a constellation together. The reason we're not doing it in one single go is because we want to place this in different orbits. We're looking at an orbit called dawn dusk, where we almost always have sun's illumination for us to be able to track objects because we are doing passive tracking with these systems.
Nice.
And the next variant of satellite uses a LiDAR, which allows us to do active ranging, and we don't have to be always dependent on sunlight. So these are different configurations of satellite that we are launching. And the another batch of constellation that we're launching is basically to equatorial orbit, so that we look from equatorial planes towards geostationary orbit so that we track from, let's say, 500, 600 kilometer to a 45,000, 35,000 kilometer. So these are different optics and optical sensors that we're using for us to be able to do sensing across different orbital regimes. And one other initiative I think that we did announce was also doing the same thing for lunar orbit, because we have seen a lot of conjunction or collision warnings in lunar domains, and lunar domain has become a very important domain for military, and US government runs programs at this point in time to monitor traffic between Earth and the moon. for them to see which adversarial country or a nation is now launching satellites to moon, because the next phase of, let's say, launching of missiles may not happen from ground, it will happen from space. At that point in time, you would want to ensure there are no operational surprises, and that's something that we are solving for across orbital domains.
Very nice. Anirudh, of course, the way you've explained it to us clearly talks about the fact that it's a very planned methodology that is being followed for achieving a holistic view for sensing in terms of all of the different orbits that it's being launched into. Sounds exciting, and of course, wishing you all the best for the launch, you and the team. But now let's come back to Digantara for the aspect that you also operate across two very different ecosystems. India brings engineering depth and cost efficiency, Anirudh. The US brings defense customers, procurement scale, and regulatory complexity. I would like for you to maybe shed light on this. India and the US to meet defense and regulatory requirements. That's one aspect. So why is this split critical? And how are the two
Yeah.
operations differentiated?
Again, I think it's mainly because of the fact that every country is now looking at building its own sovereign capability, and they don't want to be dependent on each other. So they encourage their own companies to build capacity for them. Just like today's SpaceX is basically critical asset for the United States, and any rocket capability, be it ISRO or a bunch of other private launch vehicle companies, are highly important for the Indian government. So this particular case of building entities which basically doesn't talk to each other or builds different technologies was very important for us to serve the interests of local governments. And it's also mainly because of regulatory reasons and the sector that we operate in. For example, in India, we can have sensors on ground that does tracking of space objects, but can we
Sure.
share data from that particular sensor, let's say somewhere in Uttarakhand or even Gujarat, to an American customer of ours? No, we can't, because we're violating certain guidelines that Indian government has at this point in time.
Right.
Similarly, for the US, we cannot do the same, where we have sensors in the US, or we operate satellites as US owned satellites and still sell the data to another country unless we have regulatory approval from the US authorities. Now, this was more of a market access mechanism for us to separate out the entities so that we abide to local regulations and also ensure we follow what the guidelines has to say in any country that we are setting up our entities or serving to that particular defense agency, so that there is no mistrust. And this often happens in this particular sector. And I think we've always had a playbook in the past. Like Boeing today operates out of Europe, Airbus operates also out of the United States. So there are
Yeah.
multiple ways of you doing business in multiple countries.
True.
It's just that you'd have to ensure you follow local regulations. And the most important thing why we looked at the US is because even today, the largest share of satellites in orbit is from the United States, and the largest budget that is invested into
Sure.
defense or space sector is from the United States. So we had to have a presence in the US for us to be able to get at least some part of that particular market from United States that we can work on. While we have an emerging market in India. India, for the longest time,
I was
had
actually just going to
army.
come to that.
I mean, we had Army, Navy, and Air Force. Now we have Space Force equivalent agency in India called Defense Space Agency, which is now looking at procuring solutions for space military aspects. And
True.
we're just seeing that new movement in India, and we don't also want to miss out on what's happening here. Hence, I think we had to split our entity, and this was a very cognizant move where we hired Americans there to work on different programs that we've got from the American agencies. In India, we're working towards all Indian defense related contracts.
And very quickly, I would like you to probably remark on this that deep tech funding in India is something which is taking on momentum now. I believe, of course, we are still well, lagging behind as far as the research aspect is concerned when it comes to deep tech. But space tech is doing fabulously well, or at least it's growing exponentially. What do you have to say to that as far as the India ecosystem is concerned?
Now, I personally think it's a wave at this point in time where they're seeing a lot of companies emerging in this particular sector, and hence, they would like to invest money into new business models, innovations. But I think the first batch of companies like ourselves and few others, they would have to do significantly well and build investor interest for the next batch to be able to raise growth funding.
Fair
Today,
point.
I think pre-seed and seed funding is solved for
Mm-hmm.
because of two things. One, government's push towards deep tech. And the
Mm.
reason I say that is because I think government did announce RDI funding,
Yes.
where government becomes an LP and any fund manager in India can apply and get money as far as he's investing in deep tech.
Mm.
So that makes even other VCs or investors who weren't part of
Mm.
deep tech before to
Mm.
now invest in deep tech for them to get
Mm.
that particular LP.
Mm.
So that is also, sort of helping deep tech, be it space tech, semiconductor, even biotech, get a lot of
Mm.
funding, which is again early stage. But what is still missing in India is that growth stage funding. And I'll give you an example. In our case,
Please.
while we were doing this round, we had two choices. One, either raise a growth round from abroad, which will
Mm-hmm.
increase the foreign shareholding within our company,
Yeah.
or find an Indian investor
Mm-hmm.
to ensure we still are an Indian company so that we qualify for all government contracting within India. And because last couple of years, defense has really moved towards Make in India, and their
Yeah.
eligibility criteria have changed, which means we require growth funding in India. And we've
Mm.
seen the same reflection in public markets. Public markets, at least defense sector, is doing quite well,
Yes.
also because of all the incidents that's happening where government is now investing a lot of money. And all of this, I think, is like more or less like a signal for investors to invest in this sector. And again, this is just a signal. There is no
Mm.
heuristics for startups yet.
Mm.
So what becomes very much important is how the first batch of companies perform, not just in terms of building tech, but also in terms of being able to build a sustainable business. And is it scalable or not? It's still a question that one of us have to answer as we grow.
But I think you've answered it well enough, to be honest, Anirudh. I think it's a very pertinent point that you've made, that genuinely, if the leaders in the ecosystem are doing a lot more robust work, it will just create that sense of ease and confidence as far as the investors is concerned to come in and start to really make sure that the ecosystem starts to flourish moving forward for the new startups which are coming through. Which of course brings me to this: with defense contracts already in hand and a very clear revenue roadmap, what gives governments confidence, Anirudh, to commit to long-term programs with Digantara?
I think the fundamental point here was the fact that there was no alternative
Mm.
for the government, at least with the solutions that we were developing.
Mm-hmm.
That's one. The second thing is that they did see foreign agencies and governments approach us and purchase these solutions.
Mm.
So these two things led towards fast tracking certain procurements, which never happened in the past in at least this sector for the defense forces or agencies, to basically build confidence in giving orders to companies like ourselves.
Mm.
And the last thing that I would like to mention is, like you again mentioned in your last question, we still lack in a lot of fundamental R&D.
Mm.
Nobody in this, at least in this country, is yet looking at funding TRL 1 to 3 and then TRL 4 to, let's say, 7 and 7 to 9. There is no TRL progression based funding yet,
Mm.
which means all these agencies, all the agencies within the armed forces, be it Navy, Air Force, Defense Space Agency, Army, look for end products. They would want products as of yesterday without investing in fundamental R&D. And in our case, I think timing was something that did work. We started doing space domain awareness when it was just a thing in the United States back in 2019, 2020. And it took us at least 5 years for us to be able to put in our own capital, develop technologies. And now we are seeing the end of the tunnel or the light where we are able to,
And you deserve
encash on
every bit
all
of
the
it, to be
R&D.
honest, Anirudh, because that I'm sure would have been a tough time for one to put in one's own money, build that
One's
runway.
own money without any confidence, will Indian government purchase this?
True.
And that is happening to a lot of other startups at this point in time. And that's where I feel it's very important for you to do business and tech hand in hand. I don't want any deep tech or a space tech company to just remain a research laboratory, because a lot of
True.
companies start and then remain an R&D center, but they would never think like a commercial company. And that's a gap that I see between us and the United States based startups or companies.
What would you like to say to the government at this given point in time? I mean, you've said it, but I would like for you to say it directly as well.
I think government has done really great in terms of promoting this sector,
Hmm.
which means the positive signaling where we are able to attract investors and all of that. Government is doing a lot of good things. Like the Prime Minister himself tweeted when we launched our previous satellite, and that gave a lot of inroads into certain defense agencies when they saw that as a credible source, and they saw that as credibility for us to, even have a discussion towards getting an order. But what is
Hmm.
still not solved for is this um, nature of being very reactive, which
Hmm.
means given Operation Sindur happened, we'll have to do XYZ procurement, and something else happens, so we'll have to start procuring 10 different stuff. If we do that, let's say in 10-year horizon, we will never build capacity or any capability within the country. At any given point in time, we will still be dependent on France, Russia, or one
Yeah.
of our partners.
Yeah.
And for that to change, I think you'll have to build a roadmap, be it a 10-year, 20-year roadmap, to even understand what kind of foreign policy do we have and what are the threats that we think we should address and how, and what are these
Hmm.
capabilities that we should have as a country. And that can start from even having our own engine, aircraft engine, or having our own satellite manufacturing capability, or
Nice.
having systems that can basically intercept missiles than purchasing
Hmm.
it from Russia. And that, I think, is true independence you can achieve once you start investing in fundamental R&D, and that has to happen outside of government laboratories. And I think we have reached a phase where government can now trust private entities as one of theirs and invest in capacity development with these private entities. Today, just to tell this fact, NASA
Sure.
doesn't have their own rocket. They are still dependent on SpaceX, which means US did invest not just in SpaceX but 10 other rocket companies to
Hmm.
ensure there is capacity at any given point in time. There is no single point failure within their capacity and within their country for anything that they want to do in terms of launch. But in India today, if ISRO doesn't do anything, there is no active rocket that can take anything to space. So I think we'll have to start de-risking a lot of these capacities and capabilities over a certain horizon, and having that roadmap at a leadership level of this particular country is very necessary for any startups to even understand how do we scale the company within this country. And again, we had a choice of either being a US company or an Indian company. We
Hmm.
chose to have our headquarters in India.
Hmm.
And that was
Wonderfully.
because we were, again, we were very much fortunate to get a lot of opportunity to talk to the top leadership and build that confidence that it's okay, it takes
Yes.
time, but I think we want to build from here. And I want this to be at least the ecosystem so that even others understand what kind of footsteps do we have to follow and what is the roadmap that the country has so that we build this capacity for the country.
Wonderfully, wonderfully put, Anirudh. I think, in a nutshell, if I were to put it across, it's very simple. We need to be stop being reactive. We need to be forward-looking as a country, as a policy, and of course, as the entire ecosystem is concerned. And the fact that we are so happy that you've taken the call of headquartering your operations from India And I believe that that was possible because, I guess, people are listening. And people are listening as well to your final message. So I'd like you to give a final message, of course, moving into 2026 to everyone who's watching, people who matter.
I think there are two things that I tell in all of my internal meetings, which basically led Digantara to wherever we are at this point in time. That two things is resilience and perseverance. These are two things that is very important when you're in a sector like this because you have to build a lot of patience to even see some success, let's say after 5 years or 10 years, but ensure you have these two things in your journey.
Thank you so much, Anirudh. It's truly been very, very inspiring speaking with you. This is, of course, wishing you and the entire team at Digantara. And thank you so much for taking all of us on front page and the audience into the offices of Digantara with that little message of yours of resilience and perseverance. And wishing all of you the best moving forward. May the year 2026 be filled only with joy, achievement, and all of the launches. May we wish you a wonderful takeoff.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Anirudh. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I was Anirudh Sharma, who, of course, spoke so well and so truly about so many aspects, which I believe he has learned from experience. He's learned from the sheer perseverance and the resilience that him and his company have had to take on as a journey. Today, he is, I won't be wrong if I say he's one of the old guards as far as the ecosystem is concerned, and he is helming that responsibility with a lot of care and awareness, building probably a roadmap for the newer startups to come in. But clearly, the point is that India is definitely in a wave when it comes to deep tech and space tech, and it's a good thing. But I believe we don't need to be reactive. We need to build pipelines. We need to have policies which allow for all of us to one day be ready to sit in the front row seat when it comes to space tech and deep tech, and constantly building from there on. Ladies and gentlemen, this was Front Page by AIM Network. Like, share, and subscribe. Think AI, think space tech, think AIM. Good evening and welcome to Front Page. Tonight, we're talking about a company with a name you won't forget, Digantara. In Sanskrit, it means the space between directions. And that's not just poetic, because Digantara works in a space where governments are suddenly paying very close attention to using satellites, not just to watch what's floating in orbit, but to understand what could become a threat on Earth. Digantara began by tracking objects already in space. Today, they're moving into something far more consequential, detecting and tracking threats before they arrive. Joining us is Anirudh Sharma, the founder and CEO of Digantara. His company has just raised a $50 million Series B funding at a moment when governments worldwide are rethinking how space security and early warnings come together. This conversation that
curious about building new things. The deeper the technology, the better. Right. As the field of machine learning was developing, I got bitten by is curious about building new things. The deeper the technology, the better. Right. As the field of machine learning was developing, I got bitten by with a classmate of mine, I started a company that was, in today's terms, a AI-powered EdTech company. But that was before the phrase AI very common, so we called it a machine learning-powered EdTech company. So I really wish we had LLMs in those days, but we did not. So probably today would have been a better time to start that one.
Right. Do you think it is realistic to build national deep tech infrastructure layer in the next decade. What made you choose just deep tech startups or companies and not AI powered? How do you evaluate a founder's real technical depth versus their pitch desk depth?
Look at a founder, or when I talk to them, I'm always on the lookout for, or we are always on the lookout for, not just me personally, how well do they know what they're trying to solve, right? What do they know about what they're trying to solve? What do they not know about what they're trying to solve? And most importantly, what do they know they do not know about the problem that they're trying to solve? The last part is actually the most interesting.
Welcome to today's episode of Tech Talks. I'm Smriti Nadik, tech journalist at EM Media House. Today I have with me Mr. Karthik Mathatil, partner at Yali Capital. Hi Karthik, thank you for having us at your office. Let's jump right in. You worked across various sectors and founded an ML-powered edtech company. How has that shaped your journey throughout?
Thank you, Smriti. My formative years was spent at Texas Instruments as a chip designer. So that was where it all began, and there was a passion for engineering that was all around Bangalore in those days. Texas Instruments was the first multinational that set up office here. Right? So right from those days, I was always curious about building new things. The deeper the technology, the better. Right. So in my career as a chip designer and later a manager in the chip design space, I've worked on a lot of digital signal processing, audio, video, general purpose DSP, wireless. And then I moved on to a microprocessor startup. Then spent some time in another semiconductor major, Cypress Semiconductor. So you could say that the first half of my career was all chip design. And then as the field of machine learning was developing, I got bitten by the entrepreneurial bug. And with a classmate of mine, I started a company that was, in today's terms, a AI-powered edtech company. But that was before the phrase AI was very common. So we called it a machine learning-powered edtech company. So I really wish we had LLMs in those days, but we did not. So probably today would have been a better time to start that one. So after running that for a few years, I moved on to a startup called Atonarp, which was building AI-powered spectrometers for the semiconductor manufacturing industry as well as for medical devices. I was VP of engineering there. I ran the Bangalore office, and then I moved to the US where I ran the Phoenix, Arizona office of that company for a while. So as I exited that and came back, Gani was who I knew from Texas Instruments and has been a mentor to me and a lot of other people, was starting Yali. And I felt this was a good time to use the kind of history that I've had with working in technology of various kinds and apply that to investing, which is an exciting and new challenge.
Yeah. So what are the engineering instincts that you developed early on in your career that guides you right now as an investor?
So quite early in my career, I came to the conclusion that a strong foundation in logical thinking and a openness to learning were very important to become a good engineer. That kind of guided my path as a manager as well, and continues to guide my path as an investor. So I'm always on the lookout for founders who can think very well from first principles and are open to learn. Right? They have the confidence that they can do anything. They might not know all about it yet, but can figure it out on the way.
You also went to IIT Madras. How did that shape you early on in your career? Did the edtech company also start from there?
Not really. IIT Madras, I came from a small town in Kerala, Calicut. When I landed up in IIT Madras for my BTech, I was for the first time in a group of really strong brains, which was probably one of the strongest parts of IIT, the peer group that you work with. And you get to learn that, yes, there are a lot of people who are very good, and you get to imbibe good habits from them. And I guess I learned a lot there. More than specifics of engineering, I also learned how to learn a little more than that, and then the specifics. So I kind of wanted to balance the specifics and the meta learning.
Right.
So I still hold the meta learning from IIT Madras quite close. And yes, one of my BTech classmates was my co-founder at my startup, but then that happened much, much, much later.
Right. Having led teams across MNCs and startups, how do you evaluate the founders' technical depth of their startups versus a pitch desk depth?
So a very good question, because what you'll find working in a lot of MNCs is that there is a wealth of engineering knowledge and engineering maturity that you imbibe, which you may not get from a college environment or a university environment. So when what we'd like to see are folks that are have a reasonable amount of knowledge, know what they need to figure out, and are willing to put in the learning to figure that out.
Right.
So we do technical deep dives with the companies that come to us and the companies that we reach out to. And that also helps us assess what really is going on under the hood. Because pitch decks are all nice, but yes, do you really get what the problem needs?
Right. Coming to Yali Capital, what sparked the idea, especially in the ecosystem where it's still nascent deep tech market?
So Gunny Subramaniam, who founded Yali, and I go back a long way. Gunny started off at Texas Instruments, and then he founded a company called Cosmic Circuits, which was India's first major fabless semiconductor company that got a good exit. It was bought over by Cadence, which was under Liputan in those days, who's currently the Intel CEO. So then Gunny's association with Lippu sparked the idea of a India-focused deep tech fund. So it didn't happen right then, but then he spent a lot of time with another VC fund before he moved out and decided that the time was ripe with the experience that he had with Lippu's advice and with Matthew Syriac, who is a very well-known PE investor as a co-founder. So the things that came together was India's tech ecosystem had gotten to the level of maturity where now we can see a reasonable number of deep tech startups come up.
Right.
There is a reasonable depth of talent in the ecosystem. We have people who've kind of spent their entire careers building tech from Bangalore. So they know what works, what doesn't work. And there are people with the levels of ambition that were not very common, say, a decade or so ago. And with all the wealth that has been created and is being recycled into venture capital, we all felt this was a great time to start Yali, to invest in deep tech.
What made you choose just deep tech startups or companies and not AI powered, because AI is the buzzword right now?
There are, a whole lot of VC funds who invest in India, who operate in India, especially in Bangalore. And they've been investing quite a lot in all sorts of software companies and B2B SaaS companies. The playbooks are ready. The execution has been refined over the years. So we did not want to be another player in that space. Where we felt we had an advantage is that we have been startup operators before.
Right.
We know what it takes. We have the scars on our backs. If you take everyone who's been in Yali, who is in Yali, we've had experience of running startups, taking them, selling them to other companies, getting acquired, taking companies public, investing.
Right.
So with the experience and the history, we believed that we would be in a good position to help companies that are starting up in deep tech execute better and realize value better.
Right.
So in that sense, we intended to be active investors. We take a board seat most of the time. And to whatever extent we're able to provide our knowledge and wisdom to these startups, we do attempt to do that.
Right. While shaping the theses of Yali Capital, what was some of the core principles that you did not want to compromise on?
The first core principle that we do not want to compromise on is we only want to invest in IP-led companies. Right? These are companies that are actually building intellectual property. Right. That's something that we think we can value. And that is what I think we really need as a tech ecosystem in Bangalore, as in India, a lot more IP-driven startups. And we also wanted to back really good founders. So the archetypal founder that we really like is someone with a lot of technical depth, someone with an understanding of the business, how to sell, a lot of grit,
right,
and unimpeachable integrity. So you don't find the technical depth and the ability to sell in the same person all the time. So we would advise founding teams to have more than one person.
Right.
But the grit and the integrity are things that we look for in all founders.
Right.
Because the path to success as a startup is never straight. Right? There are more potholes than in your average Bangalore road. And so grit is very important.
Right.
Right? And as has become amply clear in recent times, there are temptations to take shortcuts. And that is something I don't think we can afford in the ecosystem. And therefore, we look very strongly for integrity signals.
Moving from startups to investors right now, how do you convince yourself to stay patient with regards to capital, scaling, revenue of a startup company?
Right. We are aware from history that it takes time. Every investor would believe that they can run the company better than the founders, but hopefully, the seasoned ones know that that is not really true. It is the founders' company. They need to run it. You can advise them, and you must advise them, but they need to follow their own path.
Right.
So in that sense, patience is something that we absolutely must have. We don't want to push founders too hard or too little. Finding that perfect via media is not easy, and I'm not claiming that we've solved it, but like everyone else in the field, we're going to try.
Right. What are some of the non-obvious questions that you ask your founders while doing the technical diligence?
Question paper leaks? No, just kidding. You can revise that.
Right.
Well, when we sit through a pitch, things turn up, right? As in some fairly unique questions that are relevant to each particular domain and each particular company do turn up. So we tend to maybe go a little deeper into that. Some may be related to things that the founder has done in their background. Some may be related to the market. Some may be related to the problem at hand, what others have been doing in that problem. So that's something that we try to spend time in deep dives. Take the discussion down non-obvious paths.
Right.
But what those non-obvious paths are usually dependent on exactly what the startup is trying to do, what the company is, what the domains are, etc.
Right. You have a range of portfolios and deep tech startups, one of which is a Healthtech startup for base care. How did you decide early on to bet on something like that, which is still very early in India?
Right. So, Forbase Care is building precision genomics. They're building a diagnostic tool for late-stage cancer patients, which allows doctors to specifically tailor the cure for the particular mutations that a individual cancer patient has. Right? So that's something that has been available in developed markets for a while, but is not that available in India due to cost reasons.
Right.
Now, we figured that Forbase Care had a very interesting method of delivering a solution like that at a lower cost. And that was backed by a certain amount of IP. That was one angle that we found interesting. And another angle is the data angle. They are continuing to build a data business, which with the appropriate protections is going to make cancer care much better than it is today.
Right.
So it kind of met our goals in the sense that there is a substantial amount of innovation. It is in a fairly large market and a growing market at that. And we felt it was a good deal.
On the robotics side, you've invested in Perceptine. What were some of the challenges that they faced, and how do you think they have addressed them right now?
Perceptine is a very interesting company because they are building humanoid and semi-humanoid robots, which is a domain that has become increasingly important and popular. Right. They have a very interesting and unique approach to what they were doing, which we found very attractive. Some of the ideas that they brought up during our earlier discussions, we found extremely attractive. But as a company like that develops, there are several challenges, and I think this is typical to a lot of deep tech companies in India. The ability to execute at the pace that is required, all at limited capital cost, right, and yet not restricting yourselves in thinking, is a challenge that all deep tech companies that operate here have, and we did see that with Perceptine as well. And the founders are really good people, and they're overcoming that again through innovation, grit, and a lot of interesting thinking.
Right. Humanoids is also a very niche area. Do you think there's a market for it in India?
The humanoid space is pretty broad, right? There's the full humanoid, there are semi-humanoids, and then there is the general industrial robotics market.
Yeah.
So you add up all of that, that is pretty big. The full humanoid market is not clear yet. Even worldwide, that's something that Elon Musk is extremely bullish on. But that said, the semi-humanoid market, or just the robotic arm market in industrial engineering is already pretty big and is definitely going to get much bigger.
Right. Are there any other robotics startups that you have invested in?
Not yet, but we are looking at a few more, since robotics is one of our key domains.
Right. While the semiconductor ecosystem is still very new and is evolving in India, how did you decide to bet on the chip design startup C2I company?
Now, C2I is building a very interesting solution. Everyone has heard about GPUs and high-performance CPUs, which are being used for LLMs and AI today. Sitting next to any one of those CPUs or GPUs are multiple power supply chips, because supplying power to those chips is hard, right? And supplying power at the accuracy that you need is a lot harder.
Right.
So when we came across C2I, we found that they had a very interesting solution to that problem. Their backgrounds were just right for it. And yeah, it all clicked. It was one of those where, everything, all check marks were ticked, and we liked the founders. So yeah, we jumped in right away.
Apart from the 3 investments on your portfolio, can you tell me a little bit more about other investments that have happened in the last 2 years?
Right. So there is a company called Point AI, which we've recently invested in. That's been public. So Point AI is an interesting solution for 2D and 3D image generation problems. And for now, they have decided to focus on e-commerce. E-commerce is a fairly large market.
Yeah.
And there is a need for very innovative 2D and 3D image generation solutions in e-commerce. Right? One of the needs is a try before you buy, or try and buy, which was what the company was originally called before they renamed themselves to Point AI. And the other things that they can do include, a digital shopping assistant, 3D twins, all fall under the category, if I may call it, of 2D and 3D image generation.
Right.
What we found interesting in the company was their unique approach to solving that problem, because everybody else is looking at generative AI to solve it. And what they believe, and we agree with, is that generative AI is probably not the right way to address that problem right now. Right. They have a custom solution which works really well. And before the LLM craze, a lot of folks were moving in that direction, and they've stayed the path. And I think they have a very good solution and great potential in that domain. There is another AI company that we are looking at, which is the mechanics of the investments are in progress, so I won't name them. They're taking a very interesting approach to a particular B2B solution, where an LLM is being, shall I say, repurposed and optimized for a particular domain. And these are folks with research backgrounds, and they have IP in how to take an LLM and how to make it work for a particular domain really well. Okay, so that company we like because of the IP involved in it.
Right. You talked about researchers who have founded companies. Do you think they have the commercial awareness to scale a startup?
That would be ideal, but usually not at the beginning.
Right.
So again, we encourage founding teams to include somebody with some amount of sales and GTM background.
Right.
If they do not, we try to provide them with some degree of support, training, exposure to how B2B sales is done, so that they can pick up that knowledge over time. But of course, the preferred solution would be, at the right point of time, is to bring somebody experienced on board who can solve the problem.
Apart from capital, what kind of guidance or mentorship does Yali Capital give these startups?
We take a board seat, like I said. So, we try to keep a close watch on what is going on. A startup that's working on a limited amount of capital has a small number of big mistakes that it can afford to make. So one thing we try to do is not try to force decisions, but when things that could potentially be large mistakes, if not done right, come up, we try to make the founding team aware that, look, this is a critical point. Right? Spend a little bit more of time and thinking on this. Don't take the obvious path. These are things that could go wrong. right? That just provides some of the history and learnings that we've had in the past. Another thing that we try to do is we have developed a network of service providers that can help a startup get up and running. And early stage startups are often not good at compliances and stuff like that. So, some of the service providers that we have that can kind of get them in shape reasonably quickly. We can connect startups to investors in follow-on rounds. That's something that we do because we have connects and we can put them in front of the right people. Given some of the industry connects, we've also been reasonably successful in connecting some of them to potential customers or potential suppliers who can, make them better. So, connections, I think, in various domains can be useful for a startup.
Right. You're based out of Bangalore. How do you think this geography works for you as an investor in deep tech startups?
So Bangalore is the undeniable tech capital of India and also the undeniable deep tech capital of India, which is not to knock other cities. Hyderabad's doing well, Delhi is doing, the NCR region's doing well. And I wish we have a lot more deep tech cities in India. But we find that working in Bangalore is really good because we get exposed to a lot of new things, new trends in founder thinking, which not all of them catch on. But it gives us a chance to stay ahead of what's going on.
From your point of view, coming to the ecosystem in India, what are the infrastructure blocks that you see that slows down the founders?
In general, I wish this has gotten a lot better in terms of with all the ease of doing business improvements that we've seen. But we, as a country, need to make it a lot easier for people to start up as well as run businesses. The degree of effort and compliance that many of the startups have to put is a lot higher than in other geographies. And while we place a lot of emphasis on doing things exactly by the book, I think it must be a little easier for them to do things by the book. And also something that we do feel a need of is a lot more late stage capital. Series B and beyond becomes a challenge for a lot of tech startups. So, but that will get fixed as it's not just us. A lot of other VCs are talking about the need for late stage funding. I think that will get better. And on the other things I pointed out, I think the government is very well aware of it and they're working on it. So over time, I hope things will get better in terms of making it a lot easier for folks to start up, folks to run, and folks to raise capital in later stages.
Right. The research and development area is also pretty lagging in India. You think that is hindering the growth as well?
On one hand, I'd say that we have institutions like ISC and the IIT system that are doing a lot of great research. On the other hand, having seen the university system in the US and how well oiled the research system there is, we do have some way to go to catch up. And yes, that will get better too, as all the research institutes that we have talked to are going in the right direction. They have great ambition. So I am confident that in another 15, 20 years, we will truly be world-class in that domain. But that said, there is a heartening amount of academic-driven startups that are coming up. And the government is stepping in as well. You have things like the National Quantum Mission and the RDI that's just been launched. So all that is trying to bridge the gap that we have in terms of research.
Right. You mentioned research, academic-backed startups that are rising right now. Do you think they would be doing better if they were scaling in the US instead of India at the moment?
I don't want to come across as negative, but almost every startup will do better in the US. It is a more mature ecosystem. There is
Right.
more capital. There is more backing in terms of knowledge. But India as a country needs to catch up. But so, yeah, I think it will get better.
Right. The Indian government has also introduced PLI and semiconductor initiatives. But what do you think is still missing in the early stage deep tech startups right now with regards to infrastructure? And as well as mentioning GPU costs, compute costs.
Right. So DLI for semiconductors has been a very interesting and very good idea. So we and everybody else in the ecosystem are working with the government to improve the next version and the version after that. So again, good start, but some more way to go. PLI, I think, has been quite a success. A limited success, but a success nonetheless. So in that sense, I think there is a bright future ahead for semiconductor startups, but it's still early days. So the major stumbling point today is that it's early days. Right? So there are a lot of chicken and egg problems that are being resolved. If you need to start a semiconductor company, you need an OEM willing to buy your chips.
Right.
And the OEMs who haven't seen you yet, they do not have any history with you. They'd rather buy chips from established suppliers. So these are problems that have been solved elsewhere and will be solved in India over time as the industry develops. But we're going through the solution period.
What do you think an effective partnership between government, academia, and funds like Yali Capital would look like when it comes to testing beds or design infrastructure in India?
There's a lot of support that the government can provide in early stages of technology maturity. In, say, the first half of the TRL scale, it's better done in academia or in a corporate research lab. We have relatively few corporate research labs in India.
Yeah.
So then academia is where it gets done. And there is a lot of government funding there. The ANRF is streamlining the process of research funding. But as research comes out of academia into industry, there is the RDI scheme which is being set up, which will be a partnership between the government and venture firms to ensure that the right amount of capital gets to the right companies. So in addition, there are a lot of policy initiatives that academics, investors, and all ecosystem participants are working with the government on. And we believe that many of them will bear fruit in the years to come.
Right. Have you or do you plan to work with any academic institutions with regards to incubation or accelerator programs?
So we do not have a formal incubation or accelerator programs. That is something that we might consider in the future as the fund grows. We are in touch with several academic institutes. We have connections to professors. We talk to them informally, share ideas on startups that need to be built, are being built, can be built. So, yeah, I think those informal connections will become formal in times to come.
Right. Do you think it is realistic to build a national deep tech infrastructure layer in the next decade?
What would that be?
Shared labs, packaging, robotics facilities. Yeah.
To some degree, yes. There are things that can be set up as shared resources. And I think a good analysis can be done on whether a piece of infrastructure equipment can be shared or needs to be purchased individually. So the GPU cloud that's being set up is a good example of shared infrastructure. I think that is going to be really useful for AI startups as and when it picks up and comes online. Similarly, there could be other pieces of infrastructure which could be shared. Test fab facilities, I believe, are already available. Some IITs do provide lab access to some of the equipment that they have to startups that either they're incubating or just come in contact with them. So yes, all of these are pretty good initiatives.
Right. Keeping Yali Capital aside, do you think the VC ecosystem is very aware of the deep tech rise currently?
I think they are, because pretty much every VC that we talk to is either starting a deep tech fund or adding a deep tech vertical or is talking about deep tech. So, historically, tech development in India has gone through multiple cycles. You had the software outsourcing era. In parallel, you had the MNCs coming in there. And then you had people coming out of that and building e-commerce and SaaS startups. And now you have, multiple generations of experience and multiple generations of wealth that have come through the system and that are being recycled into deep tech startups. So yes, overall, I think the time is ripe and everybody agrees. You will find it hard to find someone who doesn't agree that this is the right time for deep tech in India. So in that sense, I believe most VCs are aligned with that.
Right. You have a range of sectors that you have invested in. What do you think the next trend is going to be?
Well, we believe that these are the sectors that are going to be trending, at least in the short to medium term. Fabulous semiconductor, robotics, AI and AI applications, life sciences, and smart manufacturing. India has kind of lagged in manufacturing, but although we've fallen behind, we can catch up and we can leapfrog and we can get into more advanced manufacturing. And there are some very interesting approaches to that we're looking at, and hopefully we will invest in one or two of them pretty soon. So we believe that these areas that we have picked, and of course AI, I didn't mention that, that's one of our verticals as well. These are the areas that are going to trend over the next 5 to 10 years. But then you never know. This LLM thing just came out of the blue. Something else could turn up over the next 2-3 years, and we'll deal with it when it comes.
Right. You mentioned there's a lag in smart manufacturing or manufacturing sector in India. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
India has not been very strong on manufacturing traditionally. There have been policy reasons and reasons of emphasis, but we won't go into that. So the average factory, if you compare the average factory in India and the average factory, say, in the West and the average factory in China, you will find that we are several generations behind. Practices, the way manpower is used, the way technology is used, the software layers, how much is manually controlled, how much is automated. We are several generations behind on an average. That said, there are folks, just like we went from, we pretty much leapfrog the landline to go to mobile phones. There are folks working on saying, can we take manufacturing all the way to the cutting edge?
Right.
And so that is a thesis that we believe in, saying that that's possible with the right kind of, brain power and the right kind of thinking. You could get these small manufacturing facilities that come up, which are quite state of the art and quite world class, and they can seed a manufacturing revolution in India. Of course, some of that comes through, say, PLI and Apple and their suppliers come to India and they replicate the state of the art that is elsewhere. Some of that comes bottom up as some startups really have bright ideas, and those bright ideas result in pretty good manufacturing setups.
One of your verticals is AI-powered startups right now. How do you differentiate between application layered startups or foundational layered startups?
So if you look at AI, there's the foundational LLM model. So today, I said LLM because that's what everyone uses today. That might be different in the future. That was different a few years ago. That will be different a few years from now. We'll just say foundational model. Below that, there is the hardware layer, right, which is all the chips that have been built to run these models on. And above that is the application layer, which is making this LLM do a task which has some value to it. You can invest in any one of these layers. You can invest in the hardware layer, you can invest in the foundation model layer, you can invest in the application layer. As a fund, we want to invest in the application layer and we want to invest in the hardware layer. The reason we're not investing in the foundational layer is because it takes a lot of investment. It takes a substantially larger chunk of money than we want to deploy. And so we're skipping that layer. There's a lot of innovation in applications, right? There are several ways you can build the application layer. You could just put a thin shim on top of an LLM and give it a UI and call it an application. A lot of people do that, and best of luck to them. They can make a good business out of it. It's good. But you can also find ways of taking an LLM, which has been trained to be a generalist, and make it a specific domain problem solver. And that may be harder than it sounds, and there is scope for innovation there. That is what we are most excited about in the AI space.
Right.
Until the successor to the LLM comes up, at which point we will look at that as well. And we are also excited about the hardware layer. There are folks looking at GPU alternatives. There are folks looking at GPUs. There are folks looking at companion chips like C2I. There are several ideas in the hardware layer which we are looking at, and when we find an idea that ticks all the boxes, the technical and commercial feasibility, that's something we look forward to investing.
Right. Due to various policy reasons or geopolitics, to name one, it has hindered a lot of foundational growth in India. How do you think startups will break through all of that noise in the next 5 years?
You can't really do much about geopolitics. Right? So you have to take it as it comes. You have to be aware of geopolitics. You have to be aware of trends. Until recently, we were in a secular, multi-decade push towards globalization, towards lower costs. We had lower interest rates. We had, the McDonald's theory that no two countries that have McDonald's are ever going to go to war. So there was a certain end to history that everyone was foreseeing. So there were themes, there were trends, startups were aligned to those, but then things have changed rather violently over the last few years. The themes that people are talking about right now are stability of supply chains, resilience, Atmanirbharta. So while you cannot choose your geopolitics, you can choose to find opportunities that come up due to geopolitical trends.
Right.
And we would always look for startups that are, right to take advantage of some of these trends.
Right. How do you think Make in India movement is going on currently in this space, in the deep tech space?
Well, Make in India has largely been, I would say, a fairly good, though limited success in the manufacturing space. Electronics manufacturing has been a very good success. Some other domains may be a limited success. Defense, we've seen a lot of emphasis in defense manufacturing. There is an increasing emphasis being placed on semiconductor manufacturing. So that is something that we believe is going in the right direction. And as we are very keen to invest in fabless semiconductor, we would be hoping that some of those initiatives bear more and more fruit over time. More than to our liking, this is something we believe is right for the country and right for the ecosystem, is a lot more, more support for demand creation for startups. So a lot of government policy has been on the supply side towards startups. You get this and you get that, and all of them are very good. But what we are struggling with as an ecosystem, and this is not necessarily about any one company or the other, is a lot of the chicken and egg of you want to build fabless semiconductor ecosystems, but your OEM ecosystem is used to buying chips from elsewhere. So, how can you, from a policy framework, without picking winners, without favoring one company or the other, find a way to stimulate demand for some of the startups that are coming out? And we know that folks in the policy space are thinking about it. And the ecosystem is thinking about it, talking about it. So hopefully we should see something happening.
You talked about the supply chain. Where do you think India can lead in the deep tech value supply chain?
Globally?
Yeah.
Okay. It might be premature to talk about global leadership. At the moment, India is in a pretty good shape in automotive. So we do see a lot of automotive export from India. India is increasingly good at electronics export. So I think that's an area that we can carve a space for ourselves globally. We're already good at software. As SaaS becomes good, and as AI applications pick up, I think that is a way for us to be plugged into global supply chains. So these are the things that come to mind. But early days, I think there are other domains that will come up. But it is my personal view that India as a country should plug into global supply chains. To some extent, yes, we need to be self-reliant, and all of that is good. But we should not forget that plugging into global supply chains and being a part of global supply chains is how you stay competitive.
Absolutely. Some founders argue that some of India's semiconductor initiatives or robotic initiatives are political narratives rather than efforts to building capabilities. How much of that criticism you think is justified?
I wouldn't really agree with such criticism. So if you pick any policy, I can find something or the other to criticize in it, and I will definitely do in the right forum. But overall, I think these policies are helping far more than is appreciated, and hopefully they get better over time.
The processing cycle from the government's initiatives is also rather large when it's compared to private accelerators or funding. Do you believe that government processes or even some investors are hindering that innovation breakthrough in India?
When you get involved in a government process like DLI, it takes its own time. The government's learning too. Every sector is grappling with the need for trained manpower and the need to improve processes, and the government is no exception. So traditionally, the wheels of government have moved very slow, and the wheels of innovation have moved fast. Now, when they come together, there is this natural conflict because the government wants to be slow and careful, and innovators want to be really fast. As policies evolve, some of these conflicts will play out and be resolved. I hope sooner rather than later.
There's a lot of patient capital available through VCs currently. Do you think founders also have the same kind of patience when it comes to scaling and getting revenues?
Interesting. Is there sufficient? There is a lot of patient capital available. If you look at funds, the average fund cycle is becoming longer and longer. People are talking now of 15 year. We're a 10 plus 2 fund. People are talking about 15-year funds now. So yes, there is patient capital. Could there be more? I think yes, there can be more. That said, your average founder is a young, late 20s, early 30s, guy or girl who spent some time in either a MNC or an other startup, eager to build something on their own. What we tell them is, if the amount of time you spend in a startup is an investment, you will be making less than your market value. Of course, we ensure they get paid reasonable amounts, but they will be paid less than what they make at an MNC. And they need to remember that there is a certain amount of time where it's humanly possible to not get frustrated by that.
Right.
So either they need to have the patience of a saint, or they need to drive themselves hard so that they execute and prove their value in the window where it's humanly possible to handle frustration of being underpaid. And that's how value gets created.
Right. In your experience, have you seen any of these founders give up sooner than they should?
I think our particular founders have all been quite gritty. Yali is fairly young. But there are stories in the industry of things that could have been, had things been different. So, hopefully we don't come across any of that.
Right. What's one systemic capability that India must build on to unlock the deep tech scale in the ecosystem?
A lot of things come to mind. I'm trying to pick one. The one thing I always envy about the US or the Silicon Valley system is their ability to celebrate failure.
Right.
Which I don't think we have learned yet. The ability to shrug off failure, move on, pivot, get on to the next problem, and not be seen as someone who failed yet someone who found 99 different things that did not work, is a character trait of an ecosystem that I think we will develop over time, but something that's going to be important for us.
Right. If you were to advise a 23-year-old founder on what the deep tech ecosystem is right now, what is that one thing you would ask them to avoid?
Avoid?
Yeah.
The one thing that I'd like them to avoid is taking shortcuts. Okay. This is probably not true of the deep tech ecosystem, but the larger startup ecosystem has seen a lot of success and a lot of money in recent times. And we've, without naming names, also seen some flame outs because of shortcuts. And that is something that the wiser heads in the industry are trying to advise everyone to avoid, that there are no shortcuts. Success will come. And in deep tech, it will take a slightly longer time than in other domains. But when it comes, it will be bigger and it will be more satisfying. And not taking shortcuts is probably the biggest advice that we can give.
What's that one long-term impact you would want Yali Capital to have in the next 10 years?
In the next 10 years, well, our hope is that we would have multiple successful companies in each of the domains that we want to invest in. Over the next 10 years, hopefully we'll have multiple funds and many successful companies from those funds. And today, a fabulous semiconductor startup is a rarity. We want it to be commonplace as a SaaS startup.
Right.
And some of the domains that we are in, again, are founders sometimes hesitate to jump into. If there's one thing that we'd like to see in 10 years is as many founders jumping into semiconductor startups as are doing SaaS startups.
All of the team members in Yali Capital have a lot of experience in this background. But what made you start a venture capital firm instead of starting a startup, maybe?
If I may be a little flippant, age. No. At some point, you do want to transition from being an operator to being an investor, because the balance between depth and breadth and specificity and generality kind of shifts towards generality over time. And we believe our experience can help more than one person if you act as an investor.
Do you think the mistakes that you made, you hope the founders right now shouldn't be making? Is that guidance, is that something that you're providing as well?
There is absolutely no one who's not made mistakes, and there is absolutely no one that will not make mistakes.
Right.
What we can help with is some guidance in terms of what kind of mistakes not to avoid, what kind of mistakes to avoid. A startup that has perfect execution is probably only found in fiction. And it's pretty much impossible to not make mistakes. What we can help them is tell them about the consequences of mistakes that have been made in the past. Some that we have made, some that we have seen other people make, and kind of help them think about it and think rationally about it.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Karthik, for having this conversation.
Thank you,
I'm
Smriti.
sure people have taken some insightful takeaways from this. I hope you had a good time. Please subscribe for more.
I was always curious about building new things. The deeper the technology, the better. As the field of machine learning was developing, I got bitten by with a classmate of mine, I started a company that was, in today's terms, a AI-powered EdTech company. But that was before the phrase AI very common, so we called it a machine learning-powered EdTech company. So I really wish we had LLMs in those days, but we did not. So probably today would have been a better time to start that one.
Right. Do you think it is realistic to build a national deep tech infrastructure layer in the next decade? What made you choose just deep tech startups or companies and not?